Hey, and welcome back. In today's video, I want to take you through my process of preparing for a one-off gig as a hired gun. As a freelancing musician in a small market, this is a crucial piece of the puzzle. And whether it's filling in with a local band at a club, getting a call to jump in with the house of worship band at a church, or filling in with a national touring act coming through my region, being able to prepare for these one-off gigs and do it quickly and efficiently is an essential part to my success. In this case, I'll be taking you behind the scenes as I prepare for an EP release show with Nashville recording artist Brady Lee. Brady and I actually go way back, and we grew up in the same town. We've played together a bunch over the years, but that was mainly tied to me filling in at a church where he was working as a worship director. Over the last couple years, his solo career has really taken off, and I've been enjoying listening to his new singles and seeing his updates from his constant touring schedule all over the country. When I was asked to play drums for this show, I was really excited to prepare this music because I know Brady's been working with the top producers and session musicians in Nashville to bring these songs to life. And even though country isn't really my thing, I think we can all see how today's country music is incorporating a lot of elements of other popular music. And at the end of the day, good music is good music. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so a few days after I accepted this gig, Brady sent me an email with everything I'd need to prepare myself. So, as he puts it, here's some stuff. So we've got a zip file here, so I'll go ahead and get this downloaded. And as you can see, this gig happened on June 3rd, 2022. It's currently May 23rd, so that gives me just under 2 weeks to prepare all of this. So first thing I see here is we've got the set list for the gig, and we've got 10 songs to prepare. And if there's one thing I know about Brady from working with him in the past is he's always prepared on everything and super organized. So of course the key signature is here, all the details of things that'll happen in between these songs. And the next thing we see is he's got audio for all the songs already in order, and he's included the BPM for each track in there, which is going to be important for what I want to do next. With today's country music having so much pop influence in it and heavy production, I'm not surprised that we're going to be playing with tracks and a click and all of that, just to give it the full sound with only a 4 or 5 piece band. And then this other folder here is the charts, and unfortunately these charts really don't help me much with the drum parts, but it does give me an idea of song structure and the lyrics, which will kind of help guide me through some of it. But this will be a good reference to go back to with my charts and look at, but I'll probably be writing all of my own charts for this. So the first thing I actually want to do is open up Logic, and I am going to one by one drop all of these tracks in here. Now the reason I want to do this is because since we're going to be playing a highly structured show and everything is going to be to a click, this can just kind of help me simulate what that's going to be like in my practice. Alright, so now I've got all my tracks loaded in here, and they could just play sequentially. So now what I'm going to do is just put some markers in here for each song, just so I can see it all easier. Now this intro does not have a BPM, so I'm just going to set it to 1. And I'm going to drag this second song over. And of course, all that space in the beginning is perfectly 2 bars, which I expected. Alright, and then here, we're just going to add a heading for the second song. So then it's the same process over and over of just doing this for all 10 songs. So I think I'll speed that up for you and won't waste your time, but then we'll come back and regroup as I get started to start digging into these songs one by one. Alright, so now this is all done. For some people, they're going to think this is overkill and took a bunch of time, but with this being kind of that playing to track style show, I just figured it would be helpful for me. And in addition, the more time I can spend listening to this music, even if it's just while doing a task like putting this together, that's only going to help get them in my head more. This now will play the whole way through, beginning to end, and the click track will change with each song. I don't use Ableton, but I think that would probably be a lot easier way to do this for people who do. But for me, this will work. So now on to my next step, which will be writing out charts for all these songs. So, alright. When it comes to writing charts, I think it's important to say that charting is a uniquely individualized process, and what makes sense to me may not make sense to you. I'm happy to share the template I use for writing charts, and maybe it'll open your eyes to a format that could be helpful for you. But at the end of the day, you have to use a format that will most help you play the right thing when looking over at it on the gig. So of course, I start with the title, and in this case the BPM, since I know we're playing to a click and a track. On the left side of the chart, I'll label each section of the song along with the length of that section. I do this in Sharpie because it stands out more when I'm looking at a distance, and this whole left column is really just a macro view at the song. After that, I'll switch to pencil and chart in any grooves, hits, fills, or breaks that I need to be more specific about. In this scenario, with playing to tracks and being a release show for an album, I felt obliged to really notate out almost everything I could hear, including the fills. On a cover band gig, I wouldn't be too worried about nailing everything note for note, and with sometimes having to learn 30 to 40 songs, there just isn't time to go into that depth. But this show was just 10 songs, and it's my job to best represent this album as I can. So after getting this first song done, I could move on to charting out the other 9. The only challenging thing that came with these charts was gauging where I cover drums versus where the track might cover some sort of digital drum sample or loop. I actually emailed Brady a couple times to discuss specific songs, and if you're working with a new artist where this might be a factor, I'd encourage you to reach out and clarify those things before you get to rehearsing. On some charts, I would actually sketch out those digital drum loops just in case I needed to cover them later if the tracks were to fail or misfire. Once I had everything written out, I scanned these into my iPad so I could have them all ready to go in order on my tablet. If you use the Dropbox app, they have a fantastic scanning feature, and then it'll save right to your Dropbox account and sync with all your devices. The last thing I want to do on stage is fiddle around with paper charts and a music stand. So reading on an iPad is a super discreet and efficient way of doing things. After I had everything scanned, I could head over to the drums and begin practicing.
Listen, we talking about practice.
I usually teach 4 or 5 days a week in this space, and I'm mostly set up for my students. But with it being the end of the school year, I had canceled all my lessons this week, so I was able to set up my drums exactly like I anticipated for this show. Using my Logic file with all the tracks and clicks already in place, and my iPad for music, I was able to run through the entire show without stopping, and made a point to run this show front to back a few times over the week. I also added these tracks to my phone, so when I was on longer drives for gigs, I could get the songs in my head, even if it was just subconsciously absorbing them while working or focusing on something else. So now with the show day finally here, it was time to pack up and head out to the gig. Another important part of preparing for a show like this is picking the right equipment for the setting. After talking to the sound guy, who's a friend of mine, he recommended I use some darker cymbals for this livelier room. I ended up going with a set of 15-inch Bosphorus groove hats, 18-inch syncopation crash, 22-inch traditional ride, and an 18-inch antique crash. These Bosphorus cymbals are fairly thin compared to a lot of other companies, and they're easy for me to control in almost any room. The snare, I ended up choosing this 60s Gretsch chrome over brass drum. I wouldn't normally use a metal snare drum in a room that's this unfavorable. When I use something like the big fat snare drum on top of this, it cuts away a little bit of the volume on stage, and of course gets the pitch a little lower as well. For the actual drum kit, I used this Gretsch Catalina kit with a 20-inch kick and 12 and 14-inch toms. For a country gig, I'd probably be more inclined to use something bigger, but honestly, with the level of sound production we're doing, I knew that the front of house was going to do whatever they needed to get the drums sounding good in the room, and this kit has plenty of low end when tuned down. In addition to the drums, I also packed my iPad for charts, my in-ear monitors for tracks and click, and a mount for my iPad so I could get it somewhere where I could see it on the show. And since this is a country show, and I don't own any cowboy boots or a denim jacket, I figured I'd at least throw this flannel in if I needed to enhance my southern charm a little more. So with that, it was time to load everything up and head to the gig. One benefit of a load-in 5 or 6 hours before the show is there's plenty of good parking. So I was able to load in right by the door, but of course with this venue being upstairs, my usual one-trip load-in on the rock and roller cart was out of the question. Once I got all my drums upstairs, I was able to talk with the production team about where they wanted me on stage, because of course I was the first band member to arrive. After that, it was just setting up, getting mics and cables run, and doing some preliminary sound checking. Once everybody else went through the same process, we got together to discuss the tunes and run down the show. Once everybody had a comfortable in-ear mix, we ran every song down just once. If there's one thing I love about playing to tracks, it's the consistency of each performance. If you're willing to spend the time to prepare, you can show up and depend on everything being exactly the same as you did it on your own. Tempo, count-offs, cues, endings, and all of that stays exactly the same. It does take away a little bit of the freedom to adapt and react to an audience, but the production level makes up for that with the ability to take our 4-piece band on stage and add a lot of depth through additional layers of pads, background vocals, and other instruments to each song. Once we finished our rehearsal, we had a couple of hours as a band to grab a bite to eat during the pre-show meet and greet and the opening act. But after that, it was time to play the show. I was lucky to be able to multi-track this board mix and grab some footage of the show, so I've included some clips here.
I don't need anyone else but you. 'Cause when you say hello, baby, anything goes. It could be any time, it could be day and night. You can call me whenever you like. 'Cause there's something in the way you talk, I can never hang you up. And I'm hanging on for dear life. Yeah, I'm laying it on the line. Yeah, I'm laying it on the line. You came reaching for my hand for our first dance, and it was like there was nobody else in the room. Baby, it's you and me, all the rest is history. The only thing I'm seeing clearly is you. Hit me so hard, knocks me right off my feet. Yeah, it's gonna leave a memory of you. Hit me so hard, knocks me right off my feet. Yeah, it's gonna leave a memory. Yes, but I was drunk on you. Yeah, that's the cold hard truth. Didn't know what I was getting into. And I spin you around in the headlight haze of a dirt cloud, and I thought, wow, maybe it's something in the air. I don't care. I'm watching. Come on. I'ma put my feet up, slow down, sleeping in the sun to radio sounds. I've got them 10 lines on that island time to prove I'm here to stay. Cooling off with the cold one, because my week's coming undone, yeah. No plans with anyone, and you can call me lazy, but I can do this all day. Yeah, I can do this all day. It's gotta be 80 degrees.
And just like that, the show's over and it's time to pack up and head home. The show went super smoothly, and I honestly felt like my best playing to these songs was done on stage. My only regret is that my eyes were pretty glued to my iPad throughout most of the show. I would have loved if I had the time to learn these songs and commit them to memory, but given the great detail I was going to, with learning all the fills and patterns pretty much note for note, it made internalizing them really not an option on such short notice. Since all these songs have been charted and scanned in now, I can easily file them away for the next time I get the call to fill in, and the preparation will be a lot quicker. And maybe by then, I'll have committed some of these to memory. I had a blast not only playing on this show, but working up these songs. And seeing as this was an EP release show, I'd encourage you to go check out Backyard Vacation by Brady Lee sometime soon. Brady is creating great music and working with top Nashville producers and session musicians to bring them to life. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a comment down below and giving it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more of my content and stay up to date for future video releases, consider subscribing to my channel. Until next time, thanks.
I'm not saying that again. I'm not getting that on camera.
Aren't you glad you didn't go with bananas?
How much can I pay you to put that on your vlog? I forget the logo. I am a subscriber to Mike Malone's. What does your channel have an official?
He doesn't even know your name of your channel.
I do subscribe because I watch the videos. Because the one with the Black Beauty.
He crawls out with it.